Record now. Yo, it's Tynee Talks. We gonna talk about it right here. Yo, you ready? It's Tynee Talks right here. We gon' talk about it right here. We gon' talk about everything you like. I'ma make it real clear. It's Tynee Talks right here. We gon' talk about it right here. I'm gonna talk about everything you like. I'ma make it real clear, cause it's Tynee Talks. And I'ma talk about it. Yeah, cause it's Tynee Talks. And I'ma talk about it. About it. And welcome to the Tynee Talks podcast, the podcast that educates and entertains. Remember, Tynee Talks and you listen. I have a very wonderful, exciting guest and topic today. I will be talking to the Jeremy Allen, journalist, proud father, husband, excellent friend, all the above, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll be talking about our summer working at Cedar Point, America's rocking roller coaster. And I just thought it was just apropos to discuss this topic since it's summer and we're in the thick of working and people are, having summer jobs. And we just want to share our experience because it was a hell of an experience working at Cedar Point. Today's episode is brought to you by the Money Mom podcast, where we talk about everything else. Let's talk about money.
You're a mom. You have the desire to start a business, go back to school, or change careers. But since you've had kids, it's hard to stay motivated. You may be reading books or listening to different podcasts about changing your financial life. But it's a disconnect because the people you are listening to are not mothers themselves. Don't worry, I got you. On the Money Mom podcast, I interview a variety of moms chasing their financial dreams. We talk openly and honestly about balancing money and motherhood. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, most of the major podcasting platforms. Follow me on Instagram at The Money Mom Podcast, or look at my Facebook page, The Money Mom Podcast. We talk about everything else. Let's talk about money.
So shout out to Shree, the founder of the Money Mom podcast. And make sure y'all check that out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow her on Instagram at the Money Mom podcast. I love that tagline. We talk about everything else. Let's talk about money. So guys, I've been on a complete hiatus from Tynee Talks podcast. And I apologize to y'all because I missed y'all, but your girl started a new full-time job. And I'm absolutely loving it. But y'all, they're making me work. I'm talking about they're making me work hard for this money. And that's exactly what they're doing. But in the same vein of working, this is the last episode of this season before we go into next season. And next season is wedding season, because if you've been listening to me for a while, or if you're just now tuning in, your girl got engaged and I'm getting married. So next season will be all about chronicling that journey. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Jeremy Allen. Jeremy is a team leader for marketing at Bedrock Detroit. He's a Detroit native. He graduated from Eastern Michigan University in 2006 and 11. Go Eagles. I mean, it's all about go blue for me, but they was right next door. So, it's all to the good. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. One minor correction. I'm a Pontiac native. Did spend some time growing up in Detroit, but Pontiac is where I was born and raised though.
Okay, well, shout out to the Pontiac then. That's closer to Mama Flintstone through and through.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah,
spent a
but
little time in Flint.
I did. So in my career as a journalist, prior to entering the marketing field, I was actually a reporter at the Flint Journal. So spent about a year and a half up there around the time when the Flint water crisis broke out. But it was great. I got a chance to meet a lot of business owners in Flint, a lot of people doing great work up there, especially in the nonprofit area. So it was definitely a good time up there in Flint.
I know it was, because we lit.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about what you currently do before we throw it all the way back and let them know how we first met each other.
Yeah, so right now I work in downtown Detroit with a company called Bedrock Real Estate. And it's the largest real estate and development company in the city. And so, yeah, what we do is we dabble in all sorts of real estate. So we do ground up development. If anybody is in the downtown Detroit area, if you've seen the Hudson's project, Hudson's used to be the biggest retail shopping plaza in America. And, it was demolished a while back, and now we're rejuvenating it, building it from the ground up. But projects like that is what I'm involved in, as well as retail and residential in downtown Detroit. And one of the other things that we do, which is kind of unique to a real estate company, is that we do event and program activations. So again, if anybody has been in the downtown area for the winter, we did a drive-in movie theater in downtown Detroit, first of its kind ever. And currently through the summer, we have an activation called the Monroe Street Midway, which is a basketball, roller rink, live DJ park. So it's a great experience, something like nobody has ever seen downtown in the city. So I would definitely encourage people to get out there and make their way down to the Monroe Street Midway, because it's an excellent way to spend a night in the summer. So
y'all heard it here on Tynee Talks. Make sure y'all get down to Detroit, to the Midway. Check it out. Soon as I get to Michigan, y'all know I'm in Texas now, but as soon as I get to Michigan, I'm going to go down and I'm going to support, because I saw the photos, I saw a little bit of media coverage, and it looks dope. So y'all doing the thing. I really feel like y'all stole our name. The Flintstones is Bedrock, but we let it slide.
Yeah, look, that was one of the things I saw a while back when I was like I said, when I was working in Flint, that clothing line was up and coming, and it was like they were starting to branch out and do a whole lot of things, but the Bedrock line in Flint is dope.
It's lit, and they got the storefront now in downtown Flint. So shout out to all the entrepreneurs out there. Shout out to everybody that's getting it. But let's get into the meat of the matter, Mr. Jeremy, and that is our crazy ass summer at Cedar Point, America's rockin' roller coaster.
Man, so many stories, so many good times, so many things that make me scratch my head thinking about how we spent our summer almost 2 decades ago. I ain't trying to age us, but you know what I mean? Almost 2 decades ago, we was there.
Jeremy, when you put it in those terms, when you put it in those terms, it makes me feel old, but we still look good. So shout out to good jeans and Black Don't Crack.
There you go.
17 years ago, I met Jeremy at Cedar Point, and y'all working at Cedar Point. What really prompted me to do this episode was I had a crazy memory like a few weeks ago, and I put it on my Facebook. So if you follow me on my personal page, I have posted a story about one of my friends at Cedar Point who was a homosexual, and he was dating a guy who was a midget who had a club foot. And the friend was like 6'2", and then there was like a literal midget who had a club foot, and he was letting this midget break his heart because he was going around the whole CP. And so people were like cracking up, and they like, you gotta be kidding. They're like, oh, you lying, you're making this up. Jeremy worked there. He's there to attest that it was crazy.
Nah, like everything. I mean, it's some stories like the one you just talked about that if you tell people, they'd be like, nah, that could have never happened. But Cedar Point was this hodgepodge of college students, international people, when we just started dubbing as locals, like the people who came back every summer, who was just, you know what I mean? Like, just kind of vagrants a little bit. They bounced around from place to place, and Cedar Point was like an easy landing spot for them. But when you get all of those mix of personalities and life experiences, and you make them live together in these wild and crazy dorms, it's just, you never know what stories is going to come out of those situations.
Boy, if those walls could talk. So what Jeremy is referring, when he says a hodgepodge of people, it was literally a melting pot. When you think about America and you think about, when they talk about like when people first settled here or coming off the, what is that in New York? The ferry that everyone gets off of, like when they first
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, that's basically what Cedar Point was. Like, we could have literally had our own reality show, like Real World Cedar Point. So like, it was people from all over the world, Poland, Russia, Kazakhstan, Paris, France, Mexico, the Dominican Republic, anything, nationality, race that you can think of worked.
And it was because it was cheap labor, right? And that's what Cedar Point saw that. Cedar Point was just like, we need people who are going to come here. We need a few thousand people who are going to come here, don't mind working 60, 70 hours a week in the extreme heat, because $7, $8 an hour here is going to beat the $4 or $5 an hour that they're making over there. Mm-hmm. And they just sponsored all of these work visas for international folks to come over. So, when you throw that in the mix, again, with like the college students and the, people who are, one of my friends referred to it as like hobosexuals, who just want to kind of live somewhere, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what it was. So you had all of these mixtures just there in the heat, living in the same spot for the whole summer. And it was just, you never knew what crazy thing was going to happen from day to day. Every day was a new adventure. It literally was a new adventure. And so, well, I got so much to say because there's so much, but so like Jeremy said, almost 2 decades ago. So my first summer at Cedar Point, before I get to that, you called them hobosexuals. I called us indentured servants, especially the overseas. So you guys have to understand, basically, and these might be trade secrets, but basically Cedar Point paid for people to come from their country, and they basically had to work to pay them back. Yep. And so it was like an indentured service because they would beg to get other people's hours. So a typical work day that I would work would be 18 hours a day. And so imagine we're just regular American college students working 18 hours a day. The overseas students will want to double that and be like, can I have more of your hours? So they will be working like a 30-hour day. Or, there's only 24 hours in a day, but they're stretching it to the whole 24 hours. No, they would do like 6 a.m. to midnight and then come back the next day at 6 a.m. They like, we own it, we grinding. Not my ministry. So I'm gonna tell how I got to Cedar Point. So I worked at Cedar Point. Well, that's why I met Jeremy, summer of 2004. Wow, crazy, 17 years ago. And what led me to Cedar Point was, after my freshman year of college, you want a summer job, you want somewhere to work. So I knew a girl who had worked the previous summer, and I'm like, I want to go work at Cedar Point. Mind you, you can live on campus. As he talked about, we lived in dorms. Rent was cheap. The highest I ever paid for rent, Jeremy, was $24. How much is the highest you ever paid? Yeah, I think it was like $24 a week, like something like that. Yeah. And so we're talking less than $100 a month. Yeah. Less than $100 a month came right out your check. And we got paid weekly. And we'll get into that. We'll get to that. So one of my friends the summer before had worked and she got pregnant. And so when I was perusing the idea to my mom to let me go, she's like, such and such went and got pregnant. Don't you come back here pregnant, right? So I wasn't having intercourse at the time, y'all. I was a late bloomer. And so I'm looking like, Mama, you don't got nothing to worry about. But she's thinking like,
you go over there, you might bust it wide open, you know. So I convinced my mama to let me go with my best friend Charles. Shout out to Charles. And we got in my car and we drove to Cedar Point. So that was like that wasn't the longest distance I ever drove, but it was kind of like the first time I felt like an adult, that I'm leaving home. Even though you go to college, you still kind of feel like a kid, but it's just like you're leaving home and I'm going to work at Cedar Point. So that's what led me to apply and work. A good friend worked there. So I was like, let me try it out. What led you to work there?
Yeah, very similar experience. You know, I was a freshman at Eastern, and that was my first taste of freedom. You know, I got on campus when I was 17, and I was like, oh, this life. Like, I ain't got to, you know, come home at a certain time. I ain't got, and I wasn't no wild guy, you know what I mean? But I was just like, it felt good to have independence and freedom and not have to rely on anybody. So, you know, February, March coming along, and I'm looking for summer jobs. And I'm like, man, I'm either gonna work on my major, like I'm gonna get a summer job that's relevant to my major, or I'm just gonna, you know, chalk it up and go back to the crib. Well, one of my friends, she came from a very strict household. And she was also a freshman at the time. And she said, look, I'm not going back home. I don't care what I do. I'm not going back home. This taste of freedom was too liberating for me to go back home, right? And so she said, all right, well, I saw this poster in the eateries that talked about working at Cedar Point and how great it is. And we all went to Cedar Point for high school trips. And so she was like, this would be the best thing ever. And she convinced me to go ahead and sign up. And I'm like, all right, bet. Now I'm finna start recruiting all the homies to go up there. And this was summer 2002.
Okay, so you were there. So that by the time I met you, you were 2 summers deep.
Yeah, that was that was my third summer, was your first summer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know what kept me coming back, but no, so I wound up doing that and filling out my application and everything, getting a call back from the recruiter, and wound up starting probably 2 weeks after the second semester of college let out my freshman year. So it was, end of April, beginning of May was when I started at Cedar Point for the summer.
Wow. That is so dope. Like, it is such a good place for like friendships and your friend. I feel like working there is a word to mouth. It was like, once one friend works there, then it just kind of like trickles down. And once I got there, it was so many people that I knew, but it was also so many people that I met, because college students came from all over, from California to New York, and I thought it was really cool how our badges had like our universities on them.
Right.
And, it was just so cool. And you used the term liberating, and yes, it was liberating and free. It's really my first, we lived in the dorms, right? But it's like, at Cedar Point, you're in dorms and you're paying rent. So it's like, this is your first actual taste of getting taxes taken out your check. And when you like, WTF, I mean, because it's different from like a McDonald's high school job where you like, oh, I get my taxes taken out. But after you didn't work an 18-hour day, and your check says you worked 175 hours a week, and then to get crumbs back, you're like, what am I doing here?
It hit different, yeah. But it was, for me, it was it was straight, because again, like I said, just getting there, getting away, experiencing something different. In a lot of ways, it almost did feel like college, but instead of going to work, or instead of going to class, we went to work. Granted, much longer hours, but it was cool though, because again, it just had that same setup, and I think your experience at Cedar Point came from whatever mindset you took going into Cedar Point.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, I knew I had these loans to pay off in college. I knew, as supportive as my family was, they didn't have the financial means to help me pay for school. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, man, look, I got some scholarship money that I'm paying for first semester. I'm taking scholarship money that I was going to put toward second semester and put that toward first semester. So I can get, I'll worry about second semester in the summer. And that was sort of the cause for these repeat offenses, me going back to Cedar Point every summer. It was like, I knew I could hustle during the summer to get second semester paid for, and then let a lot of these grants and scholarships and stuff I had, take care of my first semester tuition.
That was very smart, Jeremy, and also very strategic. My undergrad was free, but I had other expenses. And that year, the second semester of my freshman year, I ended up getting a new car. And so Cedar Point was actually for me to pay my car note and my car insurance. And because I was under the age of 25, my car insurance was like $300 a month. So I was really hustling at Cedar Point. And the bonus was, if you worked your full contract, you got the additional bonus.
Right.
So, that didn't hurt.
Yeah. And for people who don't know, Cedar Point was, you told them when you were going to work.
That's
right. You set out a contract. So again, like we talked about, college students from all across the country go to work at Cedar Point, and with varying dates of school starting back, some start in August, some start in September. People would say, here's when I want to start work, here's when I want to end work. And as long as, it was agreed by both sides, then they built a bonus incentive into your contract and said, hey, if you come here and don't quit early, because so many people do, if you stay throughout the duration, we'll pay you an additional bonus. And I think mine was like $1 per hour for every hour that I worked during the summer.
Wow. Yes. You're bringing back so many memories. Like what he said, everybody did fulfill their contract. Only the strong survive. It was literally survival of the fittest. You had to have tough skin, mind you. It's college students from all over the world. So you got to deal with personalities, body odor, people exploring their sexuality, racism,
everything.
It was a crash course in cultural competency, and I would not change it for the world. Okay.
Absolutely. And everything you just touched on was the not work experience, right? Like those were things we had to deal with when we weren't on the clock. When you were on the clock, it was a whole other set of circumstances that you had to deal with. So when you talk about only the fit survive, man, I cannot accentuate that point enough, because that is the truth. I had a couple homies who got down there at beginning of May and was back home by the beginning of June. So it was like, yo, I can't deal with this. As soon as I can get one of my people to come pick me up, I'm out of here.
It ain't for everybody. So let's talk about the work experience. Where did you work at Cedar Point, and how? I know you started in 2002. How many summers did you work, and where exactly did you work?
Yeah, so again, 3 summers in, I did 02, 03, and 04. So it was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, summer between my sophomore and junior year, and then the summer between my junior and senior years. And all 3 years I worked in retail. So my first year I worked at the lockers and stroller rental spot in the very front of the park. So if y'all been to Cedar Point, as soon as you walk in, you would turn to the right and you would see a big sign next to like where the Demon Drop used to be for the old school cats. And so we did the locker rentals and we did the stroller rentals right there. So that was a real cool laid back gig. We had a huge rush in the beginning of the day when everybody was coming in trying to secure their lockers at the front of the park. And then a huge rush again at the end of the day when people was leaving the park, checking out, returning strollers and all of that stuff. So that was my first summer. My second summer, I went back there and worked in the same spot, but I was bouncing around too. I got promoted to supervisor by my second summer. So I was bouncing around doing a little bit of everything.
Pause. I want to talk about being a supervisor. So there's a hierarchy. He's shaking his head because people get drunk with power when we explain this hierarchy. And I had to pause you right there because it's very important that they understand the levels. So when you work at Cedar Point and they orient you, they take you into this room and they really make you feel like America's rock and roller coaster. So there's a hierarchy of like how much you get paid and basically your social standing within the company. So they have what is called the green tags. Those are people that are high schoolers that locally live in Sandusky, Ohio, maybe got a work permit and they work. You got the red tags, like a regular employee, like me. I was a red tag. You might get paid a certain amount, like the $7.25 an hour. You got basic duties. Then there's the blue tags. Then there is the double blue tags. And then you can get up to gold, silver. It goes all the way up to like the corporate behind the scenes where you could be a silver tag. So some people, one of the men in my orientation was a green tag, went from a green tag all the way up to silver. So there were people actually there really trying to build their way up or work their way up in the company. And they could be drunk with power, as opposed to a lot of us, we're just here to get our money and to get the fuck out.
Right. Yeah, so I started as my second summer, I started as a blue tag. So that was like, I reported to a double blue tag. The double blue tags had like their first and last name on their name tag. Everybody else had their first name. And the double blue was basically the team leader's team leader. So them was the most drunk with power. Think about the worst middle manager you ever reported to, because of everything that makes a middle manager annoying. And that was like the double blue tag, right? So the blue tags reported to the double blues. I started my second summer as a blue tag there. And everything was cool. So I had a team of like 7 or 8 people that reported to me. But we was all laid back. Like, my personality is not one to be like, I'm understanding of all of the influences that played a part in how you showed up to work that day. So I was like, yo, we gonna just rock with the vibe, man. If y'all cool having fun, we finna all be cool having fun. We finna just make this thing happen, because I'm not here to stress out or stress nobody else out. So let's vibe and let's get a good good work relationship going. So that's how I spent the majority of my second summer. I got promoted to a double blue tag at the end of my second summer, and I was like, I don't have any plans on coming back here. I'm done with this place. I could take this tag back, whatever. And lo and behold, that was my backup plan for year 3, and I wound up going back for year 3. And in year 3, I worked in the recording studio that was down a little bit from the entrance. So yeah.
Time out. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I got a little nostalgia here.
Okay. Oh yeah, superstars. That's why I spent summer 2004.
So for y'all, if you wanted to be a star, you had aspiring dreams. You can go to Cedar Point. You could record you a song or a music video. This here is my music video.
Oh man, you talk
real.
about nostalgia. Yeah, you talk about nostalgia. It's crazy though, because and we'll get into this a little bit later, but summer romances were a serious thing at Cedar Point.
We'll get to that.
So we'll definitely get to that. But that third summer was the summer where I met my wife. And so we'll hop into that story a little bit later, but for several reasons, that was probably my most memorable summer there.
2004 was lit. I don't know what was in the air. that solidified for me, like, this is where it's at. And I did 2 summers. I did summer 05, which is my freshman year, going to my 04, freshman going into my sophomore year, and 05, sophomore going into my junior year. And I started off at Kitty Kingdom, KK Holla. And that's also at the front of the park, where like the tiny kids can go and play, like 2 to 5 year olds. And we called it Kitty Hill because the kids were screaming and crazy, and the parents always just had some weird requests because everybody thinks their child is the greatest, So I had to get up out of there, and all within the same summer. So I spent a few weeks at KK Holla, AKA Kitty Kingdom. And then I went over there to the old fashioned cars that you ride around on the rail. And then I ended that summer. I spent the remainder of the summer at Coasters, which was a 1950s themed restaurant. And I spent the remainder of the summer there. When I came back the following year, I was at Coasters, the restaurant, which was heaven, because when you work at Kitty Kingdom or the Cars, you're outside in 100-degree weather, rain, sleet, or snow. Well, not snow, but rain or sleet.
And definitely a lot of rain.
Or extreme temperatures. So to go to inside the restaurant, I was good because I could be indoors. So it was a good time. So what is like, we got to get into these stories. So what is your wildest memory at Cedar Point?
Oh man, so many of them. But I mean, for me, I think one of the things that stands out most is, and this story actually led to me starting a side hustle while I was there, right? So you talked about we got paid every week. And then we talked about the dynamic of the people who was there, right? So a lot of people were either sending money back home, like the overseas people were sending money back home, or some of the locals who worked there, like the older people who I dubbed locals, who just came back every single year, regardless of their circumstances. They were just fiscally irresponsible. A lot of them just didn't know what to do with money. They blew it every night on the bar that was right across the street from the dorms. Louis. Anybody who worked at Cedar Point knows what Louis is. But so one night my roommates were going over to Louis to hang out, kick it, chill. And one of the guys didn't have any money. So he actually tried to sneak into Louis. Louis had like a $5, $10 cover charge, something like that. And he was like, man, I'm finna sneak in. I'm finna run up a tab and I'm finna dip, and they not gonna know nothing about it. I was like, I don't know about that, man. You should you should rethink this. So he winds up sneaking in, right? Like just kind of following the pack, pushing the pack through, sneaks into the club, no issues, right? Then he winds up getting a couple drinks from the bar and like, I'm gonna go back and grab my money real quick. I'll come right back to pay. Never did. And he wound up hitting like 2 or 3 bartenders like this, right? So when he's ready to leave, the bartenders told security that he didn't pay his tab. He winds up running to the dorms, thinking he's all in the clear. So we in our room chilling at like 3 in.the morning, sitting up wide awake. And the bartenders and the security from Louis come banging on our door.
How did they know what y'all doing?
They wound up somebody pointed the dude out. So I didn't even go with him because I barely went to Louis, right? My mind was just, I don't need this. This ain't what I'm about, but whatever. So I went over because everybody was going over and it was just a good time that night. So they come in at 3 o'clock in the morning banging on our door because security let them in because they told them all about what happened, whatever, right? So my man gets dragged out of his bed at 3 o'clock in the morning by Louis security, and he got into a fist fight with him in the parking lot. Dude wound up getting stomped out in the parking lot at Cedar Point, all because he felt like, look, because he didn't save $20 to go to Louis that week.
Wow.
I'm like, bro, all you needed was $20 to avoid getting stomped out and arrested, because like petty theft at this point. You know what I mean? But to me, to have seen that, because he was again, I lived in a dorm where there were 4 or 5 different bedrooms and 2 to 3 people per room. So it was
you stayed in the apartments part. Yeah.
So it was like 12, 15 people in this apartment, and he was in the room right across the hall from me. And so I hear banging on his door, and I'm like, yo, what's happening? You know what I mean? I get up ready to, I don't know what's going on, but I'm from Pontiac. Like if I hear something like that, I'm ready to, you know what I mean? So yeah. But I followed the whole situation out, man. And it was like 100 people out there just watching my man get stomped out. And then when the police came, they thought he was trying to tell them to arrest security. And it was like, nah, you going to jail, bro. And my man wound up getting out of jail, trying to come back to work. I'm like, you really want this situation again, cuz? And it didn't happen, man. But you know, that was, to me, that was like overall probably one of the craziest stories I've seen. And I was like, and the thing that made it the craziest is just, it was literally over $20.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
Louis is like, so for you guys who didn't work at Cedar Point, those who tune in, who worked, I know this will be very nostalgic for you. Louis like was directly across the street from the dorm. Like you had to kind of go through a parking lot and a fence, and you're over there. And we got paid weekly on Thursdays. And like Jeremy said, it's like $5 to get in, cheap drinks. It's underage drinking. It's, you know, because you can be 16 on up to work. I don't think they were carding a soul. And it was a good time. One of my wildest memories, besides the club foot midget cheating on my friend, it what happened at Louis, you know. So I'm going to Louis. I'm still green, y'all. So I'm going to Louis, you know, with my best friend, and he befriended some new friends. So one night I went and I had on a t-shirt from my church from Youth Day. Like everybody got Youth Day, right, at their church. But I didn't wear it to Louis, which is basically our local club. So I didn't tie it up. I got on my hip huggers. I'm hip rolling. And it literally says Angel Choir, House of Prayer. I'm hip rolling for dear life because this was in before twerking. I'm hip rolling with the best of them. We're like Shakira. And this girl comes up to me and was like, "You supposed to be a Christian? What you got that stuff on? Like, what you in here for?" And I'm like, "Are you a Christian?" She's like, "Yeah." And then like, "I'm in here the same reason you in here." So we had our little altercation. So then I'm dancing, you know, I'm real friendly. And this midget, I mean, not a midget, well, she was short. Girl start dancing all over me, and she didn't have a hand. It was like a hand and then like no hand. She's trying to freak me up. And I'm like, so at first I'm all like, okay, but then it got a little too, you know,
too personal. You're in my bubble.
So they were like, she was from Louisiana, so she's like, "Baby," you know, and I had just came from Dillard. My freshman year, I went to Dillard before I transferred, and they're like, "Yeah, she wants to be with you," and I'm like, "Who?" They're like, "You." It's a no for me. So that was just like that's like a memory that I'll never forget because she's missing a hand. And she chose me. She was choosing that night and chose me. Like, don't choose me, please.
You gotta watch who you hip rolling around. You know what I mean? You can hypnotize some people.
Okay, so let's talk about life lessons of Cedar Point. You know, we got these stories and we're smiling, talking about Cedar Point because it was a time to be alive. What life lessons did you learn at CP that you just kind of carried with you throughout your professional career, like personal life?
Yeah, I think, you know, you talked earlier just about the melting pot, right? It was just, you interact with so many different people, so many different cultures, and that's outside of the workspace. And then when you think about one of the biggest amusement parks in the country, you're getting people who spending thousands of dollars to bring their whole family to this environment and what they expect as a result of that, right? Like it might cost a family of four $200 to get into the park, but you don't realize what it cost before that $200 for them to get there. Maybe they took a plane to get there. Maybe they had to rent a car to get there. Maybe they paying for a hotel for the weekend. So they might be $1,000 in. And when they get to you, they looking at you as like, you're supposed to provide $1,500 worth of customer service, even though it only costs $200 to get into the park. So one of the things I learned was just really how to assimilate my customer service skills to accommodate for any personality type, you know, because it is really the ultimate test of dealing with different people, different personalities. When you think about people waiting in line 2 hours to ride a roller coaster for 90 seconds, when you're thinking about all of the money that they spend in, when you're thinking about the heat that they in and crying kids and all of those things, they're going to be much much less temperament or much more temperamental than you are for just having to be at work for 15, 16 hours in a day. You know what I mean? And so I think that was one of the biggest things. And when I say customer service, I don't just mean from a retail perspective. You know, even when I'm in this marketing profession, in this journalism profession, a lot of it carried over. You know what I mean? Because when I was a journalist, I was interviewing people who had just had family members killed, or who had just, you know, lost a business or started their business, and just so many different emotional, so much emotional baggage that came along with each one of those things. Like having worked at Cedar Point for so long and dealing with different personalities, it really allowed me to cater that customer service mindset to whoever I was talking to in whatever field I was in.
Mm-hmm. Wow, Jeremy, those are some great lessons, because I said Cedar Point was definitely a teaching ground. And like you said, it's just, as they say, transferable skills. You'll be able to transfer a lot of the things that you learned there and make it applicable in your professional life, personal life, and it has brought you much success. One of the lessons that I learned that carries me is just, I used to always say that I worked in a diverse environment. Like when I would go on a job interview, they would be like, you know, what's your diversity experience? And I could say that I literally worked side by side with people from Poland, Russia, Kazakhstan, China, and it's not fraud. And I was able to immerse myself in their culture, and they were able to immerse themselves in my culture. And I taught them things and they taught me things. And it, you know, sometimes a lot of people that come to Cedar Point may have only known their college, university, and home. They didn't know. It teaches you how to interact with people of different ethnicities. The other lesson that carries me on is when we were in that orientation with all the higher ups. And they said something that really stuck out. They said, you know, the Cedar Point doesn't have a lot of advertising. And I had to really think about it, like, right. I never really saw commercials for Cedar Point, kind of towards the summer a little bit, but you didn't really see commercials or ads in magazines. And they said, we are known, like, as you said, customer service. And they drilled that into us, that this family may be coming from Pennsylvania. And they're coming and they're looking for an experience. And if they have a good experience, they're going to tell 3 other families. And then those 3 other families are going to come. And then they're going to tell 3 other families. So it's about how you treat people and how you make them feel. And to your point, we work in 18-hour days, but we still got to have a smiling face and make them feel good. So I learned that even when I'm doing my podcast, I don't have a marketing budget, and I'm not, you know, on a huge network that supports me. So I have to do my best, put it in someone's hands, and hope that they tell somebody who tells somebody who tells somebody about it. And so that, you know, that just really stuck with me. And it's just a life lesson that I cherish.
Yeah. And those are great lessons. You know what I mean? And that's aside from just the things we learn outside of work. You know what I mean? Dealing with different people and different personalities. And that was, you know, again, prior to that, you deal with it on a minor level with people who are your peers and your age when you're in high school and even in college. You know, but when you get to this environment where, you know, I worked with people who were, I had a lady who was reporting to me my second year who was 58 years old. You know what I mean? And I probably would not have been in that situation at that young of an age. I was 19. You know, I wouldn't have been put in that situation in many other circumstances. And so this lady was, you know, recently retired after the death of her husband, and decided that she was, you know, about to sell her house, get an RV, and travel across the country. And then she found out about working this job during the summer at Cedar Point, and she knew she loved, you know, middle America. She was from Seattle, Washington. She was just like, I'm gonna come out here and live. And like, so interacting with her on a daily basis, teaching her about this new thing that she had never really experienced before. Like all of those things took a part in my development as a professional and in my personal life.
For sure. Yeah, great life lessons. Yeah, then when you talk about being over a 58-year-old, so diversity did just come in ethnicity, it came in ages. You know, teachers would come because they didn't have to teach in the summer, or as you said, the vagrants, I guess that's the term you use, but people who were like working at Cedar Point for years and years, and because it's cheap rent, you know. I always encourage people, if you don't have a job or you feel like you're on your last leg, apply to Cedar Point. You'll have a room and board, cheap food you can eat on campus. You know what I mean? And I always encourage young people to go. It is definitely a training ground to mature you, broaden your skills, your horizons. I was a healthcare major in undergrad, and I worked at Cedar Point, even though I worked in technically hospitality, and hospitality made a lot of them work there too. But again, those are transferable skills, and people just can be so singular sometimes to say, oh, well, I'm going into this field, I should only work here. But these other working at someplace like a Cedar Point will train you up to be better at something else, or in your field, it'll hone those skills.
Yeah, like I said, like just dealing and interacting with people. Again, I'm in marketing and was formerly in journalism. Like everything I did on a daily basis, really, you can see it in my work. You know, if I've ever interviewed you, or if I've ever written a story about you or covered a topic of your interest, I approach it differently because it allows me to really tap into the people side of things as opposed to just like the surface level of stuff, you know? So, and that's just something that I was able to really tap into during my time at Cedar Point, because, you know, again, the mindset that you take into it is what you're going to get out of it. And a lot of people, you can look at it as just a way to get away from family and a way to get away from home for the summer, or a way to escape whatever reality you got going on back home, you know. But I went there because I knew, again, like, yeah, it was an opportunity to be liberated from the rules of the house. But it was also like, no, I got to focus so I could pay off my tuition. You know, I know I'm going here. And that doesn't mean I didn't engage in some side activities, but I always have my eye on the prize. You know what I mean?
And you can engage in some side activity. Let me tell y'all, the first time I ever drank was that Cedar Point Mad Dog 2020. And you're not supposed to drink. You're not supposed to have drinks.
Not at all. Especially, and look, just you as a human being ain't supposed to be drinking on Mad Dog. That MD 2020 and how you wilding.
As we can see what 2020 did for us. Mad Dog was warning us, okay? And lastly, let's go ahead and talk about tapping in. Let's tap into the love life at Cedar Point. And he kind of mentioned it earlier, but Jeremy is a father and husband, and he found love in a hopeless place. So tell us about that.
Listen, it seemed like summer love was the backdrop for every summer I spent at Cedar Point. So I had a girlfriend in high school who, you know, she wound up going to school at Penn State, and I wound up coming to school at Eastern. And, you know, I told her, look, we just kind of had a thing going like our senior year of high school. And I said, we going our separate ways. You know, we like each other, but we didn't love each other. So I was just like, look, let's just go ahead and, you know, not try to hold each other back while we going in two different directions, and really launching into our different experiences, you in Pennsylvania and me in Michigan. And she was like, that's cool. It was mutual, you know what I'm saying? Hurt feelings a little bit on both sides, but we was both understanding of like, it's cool if we go our separate ways. Apparently that wasn't totally true on her end, because she talked to my sister, found out I was going to Cedar Point for the summer, and then she wound up applying and kind of chasing me there, right? So I had that to kind of deal with when I got there, because she popped up, didn't let me know she was coming, none of that stuff. Like, yeah. And so the whole time she was like, yo, we here together now in the summer, we can rekindle. And life comes at you fast at Cedar Point, right? So my first week at Cedar Point, my boss at the time was hitting on me something crazy, you know, an attractive slightly older than me lady. You know, I was 19 at the time. She was 27, and she was pushing up on me real hard. And you know, I didn't resist. So I was like, let's let's
Well,
let's
I didn't
look. So at the time, I was just like, man, I don't know what to expect from this spot. So let me just go ahead and indulge. You know, so we had a summer fling going on the whole summer. It even spilled over a couple months into when I went back to school. Yeah, it was a wild situation. But we wound up breaking
had a
up.
sugar mama.
So we wound up breaking up, right? And there was no hard feelings there. We knew, we called it what it was. Second summer, almost the exact same situation. This time it was my supervisor who was like 4 or 5 years older than me. And you know, we dated for a few months. Even again, when I went back home, we dated for a couple months. And it was just, I don't know, man, love seemed to just be the backdrop of a lot of different scenarios. So third summer, I was like, man, I'm not doing this. I'm coming here, I'm chilling, I'm working, doing what I need to do, make this money so I can pay this tuition. And that's what it was. You know, I had friends who we were literally just friends, right? And I went to work at the singing booth, you know, the Sing Star studio. And my wife worked there as well, my now wife, you know, but we didn't date. We were literally just friends all summer. And just like I was with a dozen other people, when we left for the summer, we all kept in contact, whether it was through texting or the occasional phone call.
Facebook.
Facebook, you know what I mean? Facebook was popping during that summer. So it was all real, just solid friendships that I had developed. And to this day, I still have lifelong friends who I've been to weddings and baby showers and anniversary celebrations and graduation celebrations. But something just hit a little different with you know, Benita, who's my wife right now. So called her up. Her birthday is in November. And so back in November 2004, I called her up just to tell her happy birthday, talked to her for a little while. And that conversation lasted for like 3 hours, you know, which was way outside the norm for with any other, you know, friendship conversations that I had with her or with anybody else, you know, male or you know, man or woman at that time who I was just cool with. And so about a month and a half later, when I was on my way home to visit my family for Christmas vacation from college, I hit her up and said, hey, you right on the way for me visiting my family. Let's grab lunch when I'm coming through. And she said, okay, let's do that. And Christmas Eve, 2004, we stopped, had lunch. And then as soon as I made it back home, me and her talked from literally 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Stayed up all night on the phone, talking, chatting. And then I said, I got to come see you again.
Sleepy? I mean, I'm sleepy.
You remember how them conversations used to go. So on the way back home, about a week later, I stopped and saw her, and we made it official. And we've been rocking ever since. So, you know, we fell in love relatively quickly. She wound up moving up here during my last year of college. A couple of years later, we had a baby. A couple of years after that, we got married, and you know, we about to celebrate our 11th anniversary, our 11th wedding anniversary here in about 2 weeks. So from December 2004 to July 2021, we've been together, and it's just been, you know,
Beautiful.
Again, I would have never met her if it wasn't for me working at Cedar Point.
If it wasn't for Cedar Point.
Cedar Point, yeah.
That's such a beautiful story, Jeremy. And because I kind of saw it, you know, that summer, to see you guys from then to now is beautiful. They have beautiful children, and
thank you.
You know, your son gets into the writing, and you know, all that stuff is like really cool. Is when you say the backdrop of love, it was so many. It was literally like Grease, right? It's summer loving, having some fun.
Yeah.
It was literally like that, and what was so crazy is I was hoping that would be the thing for me, that I would just, fall in love at Cedar Point. And that never quite happened because I wasn't putting out. But I did have a couple good makeout sessions. There was always some guy knocking on my dorm, and I had a nice little body back then, So, there was always somebody trying, but when it came to the other part of it, it was just like, well, I don't do that. So it was kind of like they went on to the next, because I'm pretty sure there's thousands of Cedar Point babies the way they were getting it in.
I'm sure, because I look. Yeah, I'm gonna just say I'm sure, and I'm gonna leave it at that. None from me. No babies were conceived by me at Cedar Point. So, but I know for sure.
We know several that have.
Listen, I know for sure. Yeah.
So, thank you for joining me in this talk today, Jeremy. It felt so good to go down, memory lane and thinking about all the good things at Cedar Point, from Louis. I don't know if you ever went to Club Eccentricities.
I heard some stories about it. Yeah.
And just my boss, one of my bosses was a drag queen, just all these different experiences. That's why I don't judge people. I don't think that they're bad people or anything, because I was able to literally experience everything that is happening now that's in the forefront happened at Cedar Point.
I definitely think Cedar Point was a haven for a lot of people who could be authentic with themselves, because again, they could leave home, come to this environment where other people like them existed. And so, one of the things that people don't know, and I didn't know until I got there, was that it is a large gay community there. You know what I mean? And it's a community where, the LGBTQ community can really be alive and be themselves.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you pointed that out. I was going to point it out moments ago, but I'm old, so things slip out. But yes, the LGBTQ plus community can truly be themselves at Cedar Point. There's no judgment. It's a good time. It's a good working environment, even though you're going to work 11 hours. But there will be some employee perks, like they would let us have midnight in the park, where the after hours we could ride roller coasters in the middle of the night. They would have you remember when we could eat all the food we wanted?
Yep.
Different things like that.
Summer bash.
Yes, summer bash.
Summer bash. That was the time. Man. And that was when everybody just kind of dressed up in their best. Yeah. Look,
we had to wear uniforms, y'all. So summer bash, you get to be cute.
All we saw each other in was plaid shirts and khaki shorts, and plain white or black shoes. Yeah. So summer bash was a hit, man, where they just opened the park for us, let us get free food, had DJs in certain spots, and it was a vibe.
It was I often sit and reminisce about Cedar Point, and I'm like, reality TV wasn't quite big yet, but if they could have chronicled our lives, we would have been a top rated, number one rated show. And if somebody here hears this and it turns into a reality show, y'all need to call me to be like a dorm mother or something. Give me my coin. But thanks again, Jeremy. In true Tynee Talks fashion, this is your time to give your shout out. So who you shouting out today?
Sure, man. I'm gonna shout out Cedar Point. It's only right? Again, my overall working experience there wasn't the greatest, wasn't the worst. Somewhere in the middle. I'll probably give it 7 out of 10. But again, that's just because of my mindset. You know what I mean? And it really did provide a platform for me to have the life that I have today, because again, without having gone there, I would not have this life that I have, because I met my wife there. We have 4 beautiful children, and we built a great life together over the past 17 years. So, shout out to my wife, Anita, my babies. Yeah, that's what I live for, man. That's what everything is about for me. I don't do it for me, I do it for them, to make sure that they have the life that they want, and I feel like the influence that I have over what they want too. So that's what it is, man.
That's what's up. Again, today's show is brought to you by the Money Mom Podcast. We talk about everything else. Let's talk about money. And shout out to Cedar Point, America's Rock and Roller Coast. I'll leave you with this thought. If you're a high schooler, graduated from high school, or you're in college, give Cedar Point a try. And I promise you, it will change your life.